Alrighty. Black and Marine Science Week. Okay, we are live. Hey y'all, welcome to Black and Marine Science Week. I'm Dr. Tiara Moore, founder and CEO of Black and Marine Science. And this is the Diving While Black panel. This panel is going to be talking about the real and raw experiences of Black scuba divers, and it's going to be moderated by Chris Howard, our Chief Relations Officer of BIMS. All right, Chris, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Tiara. So like you said, welcome to Black Marine Science Week 2. We have an awesome group of panelists here lined up for us today, and I'm excited to introduce them. First is Sidney Payne. Sidney is an undergraduate marine biology student at Florida Gulf Coast University, originally from Gainesville, Georgia. And she's a member of the first class of BIMS divers, so we're super excited about that. And she's currently focusing on a sea turtle research, working on projects in Southwest Florida and Ghana. Next up, we have Jamel Wilson, a member of the National Association of Black Scuba Divers, or NABS, and the first African-American recipient of the OWUSS Rolex Scholarship. Then we also have Andrea Williams. She's beginning her second term as Vice President of National Association of Black Scuba Divers and is a PADI IDC staff instructor. And last but not least, we have Kirsty Sturdivant. And Dr. Sturdivant is a marine ecologist who studies the effects of human disturbance on the seafloor and develops marine technology to enhance human understanding of the ocean. So now that we've met everybody, let's get started with some more questions. And first up, we have, how did you get into diving and what certifications do you have? So just feel free to jump in wherever to answer.
I'll go first. Let's break the ice, I suppose. I'm Andrea Williams here, and I started diving back in graduate school. I actually needed an hour to fill my schedule, so I signed up for scuba diving, and here I am today, many moons later. So happy to see other Black and brown faces in this space because it's so important, isn't it? Because when I started diving, that was not the case. Although I come from a family of divers, it's still, I didn't see anyone else besides them when we went, traveled. So yeah.
I can go ahead and go second.
Okay, good.
So I actually am probably the newest certified diver on here. I got certified through Andrea and through Black and Marine Science as one of their scholarship recipients for the first class of BIMS divers. So thank y'all so much for that opportunity. It had been something that I've been wanting to get because next semester I actually have a class that has 6 dive trips planned. So I was determined to get it this semester, but my financial situation changed, so it looked like I would have to delay that. But thanks to BIMS, I was able to get that open water certification. And so, yeah, I just started diving, and man, when you're under the ocean, you feel on top of the world.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess I'll go next. I'm probably the second newest into diving. I'm still a baby diver. But I got introduced to diving about 2018 on the cusp of 2019. So right before the pandemic. But I got introduced to diving through the aquarium that I worked at. I worked a lot of jobs through college and I was studying biology. So I was getting more into freshwater research because I'm from Ohio and there's no salt water up there. So freshwater it is. But yeah, I was working at the aquarium and, I saw all the divers in there and I was like, I'm getting into this field and like, how do you guys do this in Ohio nonetheless? Like, did you guys go to like Florida or California or something? And they were like, oh no, there's places here in Ohio. And I was like, Ohio, oh, okay, show me where. And after I graduated, I just used some of the funds at the end of my year to start scuba diving, and then I've been around to different places to learn more. So that's kind of how I got started.
And I got started back in 2000, undergrad, 2004, 5. And so I guess I'm dating myself. And I was doing an internship at a place called Gray's Reef, which is in Savannah, Georgia. And they, as part of the internship, I had to be able to scuba dive in order to study the reef. And so they got me certified as part of that internship. And it was kind of the introduction into what, as Sidney rightly pointed out, this amazing underwater world where there's just so much beauty, complexity. And if you're a marine biologist, everyone always asks if you scuba dive. And so even though I don't scuba dive for work, I can at least say like, oh yeah, of course, you know, duh.
Well, that's awesome. I think we didn't answer some of this part of the question. You, Sydney, I know you just freshly got your certification. Was that what level of certification was that? Just open water, or did you get anything past that?
Me?
Oh, Sydney.
Oh.
Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, we just got our open water certification.
Sweet.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next question. Have any of you had any racially charged experiences while scuba diving?
I think it's safe to say that we probably all have, in at least one way or another, whether it be like a microaggression or something kind of bigger. But yes, definitely had some instances where I, felt a little uncomfortable, or more than a little uncomfortable. One of the experiences that I had was when I was first getting into diving and everything. It was a little awkward because obviously the diving industry is kind of monocultural. You mostly just are surrounded by other white folks. And so when you're the only one, you kind of have to represent. And there was one moment where somebody came up to me and was like, oh, I didn't think that you'd be able to swim. Or one time I went to Honduras and we did some dives in Roatan. And on the way, we're part of a group and we're trying to figure out where to go to get on the boat. And, I was some slight credit. I was in the front trying to figure out like, hey, where's the boat at? Where do we go? And this couple that was in the back basically just assumed that I was the help, that I was, there to guide them and, make them the main characters of the story, guide them along their path. And I was like, no, I'm here as a fellow scuba diver. Like I'm diving along with you guys. Like I'm, part of the excursion as well. And they're like, oh, so a lot of the times you get those little microaggressions, just kind of like that couple that's like, oh, we didn't expect that. Okay. So, it comes and goes a little bit. You kind of take some of it with a grain of salt, like, but there's other instances, especially that I've had, that have been a little bit more impactful. For instance, I was doing a class and this guy was teaching and he brought out this tank and everything. And he's talking to me and, talking about the tanks and everything and other stuff. And on the tank right there and right in front of both of us is this Confederate flag. And he's just like, he's looking at the tank and looking at me, and there's no connection that's happening. And I'm just like, okay. So I was just like, hey, he took a knife out for a demonstration of something. And I was like, hey, can I borrow this knife? And he was like, yeah, as long as you don't stab me. And I was like, okay, sure. But I just used the knife to peel off the sticker and threw it in the trash. And I was like, there you go. That's gonna be, I'm just gonna help you out here. So there's been a range of different experiences that I've had. So I'll let somebody else go if they want to talk, but yeah, I'm sure we've all experienced it a little bit.
Yeah, most definitely. Anyone else want to go next before I start talking?
Sure, I'll go next. Having dived now since 91, a little over 30 some years now, I've experienced the full gamut from what Jamel just described to the little microaggressions to the blatant and the obvious. At this point in my career, I let my diving do all the talking for me nowadays. And if I have to say something, I will. But all my talking happens underwater now. They see me, they see what I look like underwater, what I can do underwater, what I can do with my students, Sydney included. They can see how great they are trained and how prepared they are. Then that's how I combat that now today. I have I just lost my train of thought, but yeah, that's how I get the point across now. Just making sure that people understand that you do the dive and they come up and they don't talk to you on the boat. They don't want to dive with you because you're black and brown. But then you do your dive and they come up and then all of a sudden they see how good you are underwater and they come up, get back on the boat. And they're like, oh, where did you learn how to do that? And then they start mimicking you underwater. So it's a form of flattery, but it's also, they don't want someone brown to be better than them. So they're going to try to do better. So, hey, let them step up their game, try to catch up to us. That's all.
I can definitely speak on a situation. So I've been diving for such a little time, but kind of from the jump, when I went to get my first gear, mask, snorkel, and fins, I could kind of like fill out the vibe of the dive shop. And he's fitting me for my mask. And he's just like, man, but what are you going to do with that hair? And he keeps like trying to tell me like all like ideas of what I can do with my hair as if I don't know how to maintain my own hair. And I was just like, sir, I can slick my hair back. I can do low braids. I can handle my hair. But he just like the entire probably like 40 minutes that we were there, he just kept circling back to the hair. And I'm just like, sir, I've been doing this for 22 years. I got this, I got it down packed. Thank you. But yeah, so just like microaggressions like that, I was just like, wow. Good to see, you know, what the culture's looking like first day in the shop. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of chime in there a little bit too, I feel like the dive shops to me is just where I feel like it's the worst. Also, on the boat, you can kind of, you know, just get in your own world and getting yourself ready. But when you go into a dive shop and things like that happen, or just little comments that they make within the dive shop, it's like, I'm just here, I'm trying to, you know, spend money in your store, and you're like saying things like this to me, or like, it's just shocking that one, they don't realize the things they're saying, or they do realize and just don't care the things that they're saying, like how they can be taken, or even if they don't mean anything by it. Like I feel they should still be able to recognize like what it is that they're saying and how that could be taken, you know, by the person of color.
Without getting into specific examples, I think a lot of what you guys highlight reminds me of something that regularly occurs to me when I was involved, is that it just serves to highlight how little the people who we're having these experiences with interact with people of colors. Mm-hmm. And it's in the same way in which it's just such a poignant like reminder that despite living in this multicultural society, so many people live in these like little silos where they don't interact with people who don't look like them or don't think like them. And then when they're thrust into that environment, they behave in ways that are very cringeworthy, if, you know, at a minimum. So it's something to just be prepared for. Like, I don't think it should be discouraging for those who are watching who are interested in getting into the field of diving, but you certainly need to armor yourself and be prepared that you will, or as often be in situations that might be uncomfortable just because the spaces tend to be less diverse.
Yeah, I was gonna jump off of one of Andrea's points in terms of kind of like showing others of your capabilities and using that as a way to advocate for yourself. You know, there's as one of the baby divers, like, you know, it's hard to do that. I'm sure Sidney, you can somewhat relate. Like, you know, I'm a part of this great scholarship right now, and I'm going around trying to get as much education as I can, so that, you know, I can show people, hey, one, I'm educated enough to do this and I can do it well. And, you know, that in itself speaks, has a voice in terms of not only can you do this, but I can do this as well. And anybody that looks like me can do this. Like, there shouldn't be a standard that, oh, well, you have to look like this in order to do this thing. Because obviously we all know that that's not true. And same to your point, Kersey, like we end up facing so much stuff that you kind of just have to be prepared for it, not to be discouraging or anything, but it's also one of the things, of course, about being Black that's somewhat endearing, because we've all been through so much, we all have to handle so much, and we keep trucking along, and we're not at the promised land yet, so to speak, but we always seem to make it out okay. We always seem to have each other's back in one way or another. And that's one of the most important things about, I guess, being in a community, whether it's being in the Black community, brown community, or the diving community, just kind of having each other's backs. So yeah, good points.
NABS just had its 30th annual summit. We met in St. Lucia in November, and there were 90 of us together. I think 45 or 50 of us were divers, but it was a nice sized group. And a phrase that came out of that week was Black and brown faces and blue spaces. We are there, we're present, and we represent, and that's pretty powerful in and of itself, and in large numbers. Our last summit that we held that was in person was actually in Egypt in 2019. We had over 170 people there. Yeah, that's where I met Jamel for the first time. So yeah, I'm encouraged that we are gathering where there is a space for us to meet. NABS is an international organization. There are local chapters around the United States and internationally. And I encourage all of you to join NABS and to join your local chapter. That's a great way to get connected and also stay connected with BINS and other like organizations. There's so much for us to connect through, so many ways for us to connect. We've got to make those connections and make them strong. I'm encouraged because I see these beautiful young faces here, and you all are the next stewards of this work. So the next generation of these two stewards. So I'm excited. I am encouraged and very happy. Yay.
Yeah, it's I think that's really important, especially kind of, being able to be cohesive, because I'm just now learning. Like I said, I'm still a baby diver. Like I've got a couple certs under my belt. I've got like my ice diving and scientific now. And, I'm working on my cave diver training. But still, like, I'm just now finding out about like all of these different programs, all of these different scholarships, things that before I was like, oh wait, this exists. Like I didn't know that this was, I didn't know that this was a thing, that BINS was a thing until somewhat recently. And I was like, oh wow, like this is beautiful. Like I was so impressed with Tiara and all of the things that she's doing. I was just like, we need to come together more often, get more people together, become cohesive. Because it's really inspiring, especially when I see other people out there that are facing the same things that I'm facing and doing the same things that I'm doing. It's, each one of us kind of represents our own flame that kind of, can shine. And I don't know, it's really inspiring to see, but we need to like come together more. That's one of the things that I've noticed, like, I want to see more folks. I want to be part of more groups. So.
Sydney, I saw you came off mute. Did you want to add anything?
Oh, no, I was just staying ready.
You always got to stay ready, right?
But yeah, no, I'm agreeing 100%. All these opportunities I didn't know about either. And just getting to know about more organizations, I can't wait to be more involved because it's an awesome community.
Definitely. And I'd like to say, like everyone else has been saying, don't let stuff like that discourage you from diving if that's something you're interested in. I say I still have to remind myself sometimes especially on the boat, just because someone's talking confidently, like they know what they're talking about. I mean, that doesn't always mean anything. I've seen plenty of people that are speaking confidently, like they know everything. Then you get in the water and they're, lost. So don't let that intimidate you, because sometimes it can be doing that just as kind of like a tactic to not seem nervous or things like that. And it can be intimidating to you, but I won't let that discourage you or scare you off at all. And I'd like to remind those watching, remember you can add things. If you have any questions, just add that in the chat and we'll make sure they get answered as we move along. Do you guys have any tips for incoming students or people that are looking to become divers?
I'm always going to say do it. Become an open water diver. Being underwater is the most impressive thing, most peaceful thing anyone can do. It's a beautiful world under there. After you complete your open water certification, I encourage divers to continue their training, continue diving, continue their training up through rescue, master scuba diver, even become a dive professional, but dive and dive a lot and dive with people that look like you. Find NABs, find a club, find a dive club, but definitely keep diving, keep diving. You only get better. Right, Sidney?
Right, 100%. I got scientific diving next semester, so I'll get a couple more certifications in that class.
Very good. Yes, I love it.
Yeah, as for me, I would say there's all sorts of opportunities and things out there. It's just a matter of really kind of hunting them down. For instance, I know like the women's hall dive. Oh goodness, women's hall dive of fame. I'm messing it up, but anyways,
Women's Divers Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Struggling right there. But yeah, they have some scholarships. I know AAUS, the American Academy of Underwater Sciences, is kind of putting together a diversity scholarship. There's all sorts of things out there. I'm happily the beneficiary of one of the big diving scholarships that's out there, the OWUSS Rolex Scholarship. And I happened to come across it by chance. I literally was just kind of, zooming along on Facebook as we all do, or maybe Instagram. I might be dating myself a little bit, but and yeah, I just happened to come across this thing that somebody sent me, and I looked into it and was like, oh, this sounds perfect for me and what I'm trying to do. And so I applied, and of course, now I'm doing all this crazy stuff, going to like Antarctica next month, which is crazy. But there's all sorts of things and programs out there. And even if you are having a hard time finding those, there's plenty of just people. Like, they don't have to be necessarily part of some giant organization, but just asking around people, looking on Facebook, looking on Twitter, looking on Instagram. There's all sorts of connections to be made. So yeah, there's definitely some possibilities out there.
All right, so Kirsty, do you have anything you wanted to add or say?
I think that take for sure the warnings that we're providing as it relates to some of the uncomfortable situations that you might find yourself in, but recognize that by and large, most of your experiences with diving are going to be overwhelmingly positive. As Andrea touched on, it's a beautiful environment. It's breathtaking to behold, especially firsthand. And there's just so much randomness that can occur in a positive way when you're down there. And the microaggressions and everything, just kind of like everything, just it's like a veil of silence kind of like drapes down, and you're just hyper focused on really kind of enjoying the beauty of the scenery and just the experience in itself. So certainly do it, get into it, as Andrea touched on, dive, do as much as you can, and really enjoy yourself, because it's such a privilege to be able to have that opportunity to explore the underworld environment that's just generally unseen.
I will add on to what Kirsty just said, and that would be used to share with the next generation, the youth in our communities. That would be the next place I would go with this. We all have the ability to talk and to speak and to share. So go to your local elementary school, go to the science classes and talk to them, talk at a career day and share your experience as a scuba diver. You'd be surprised how many students don't know about the underwater world. We're all having trouble with that today, with the underwater world, and exposing them to what that means and how it's connected to science, how you can make a career by scuba diving. There's so much out there. So just share that too with the next generation.
I would also add to that point is I would strongly encourage any who get involved in scuba diving to start taking underwater photography courses, because capturing your experience allows you to both reflect, remember, but also, as Andrea touched on, be able to share that and pass that along to the next generation.
I just recently took some underwater photography classes here in Florida, where I'm at right now. And doing macro photography and stuff, you have to keep really, really good buoyancy, and kind of teaches you patience, and just it allows you to kind of zone in, but also at the same time zone out, which is sort of good at that. But in the best way, it allows you to zone in and out. Because like you said, you get to reflect on what you're looking at, especially later. You get to learn a whole bunch, not only about diving and not only about photography, but about the world. It was a good class, to say the least.
So we have some questions coming in from the chat here. So did you ever have, this is for all of you, did you ever have any fear of the water or diving? And if so, how did you overcome it?
I can start off with that, I guess, because last weekend doing the certification, it was kind of accelerated, so it was really intense for us. And I feel like all of us kind of experienced some form of anxiety at some point. And I know I did, because I was having trouble kind of like equalizing and clearing my ears at first. So I would just I'd be trying to go up. I'd be looking at Andrea. I'd be like, up, up, up. And she'd be like, no, stay right here. She's like, go up a little bit, try again. And then there would also be some times like when you're just down there and you might get in your head a little bit, but I would just close my eyes and like start breathing. Like for the certification process, the main thing that stayed in my head was there's oxygen for me. It's right here. Just relax and breathe it. And so just kind of keeping that in my mind helped me overcome some of the fear and the anxiety as we were getting to different depths.
Yeah, I also had some apprehensions going in, but I always kind of have a maxim to keep my head straight. But obviously the ocean, if you end up diving in the ocean is vast. It's huge, it's big, it's dark, and it can be scary. There's all sorts of animals and creatures down there, and everybody in media has kind of villainized a lot of them. So yeah, at first it can be a little bit scary. And for me personally, it was a teeny bit. I don't get scared too much with thrills and things like that. But like I said, the ocean is vast and deep, and when you look down and you see just blue, you're like, oh wow. But with all of that fear, it's just something that you have to conquer. One of the idioms that I kind of stand by is the things that we fear tend to be the things that are the most worthwhile, which is one of the reasons why I'm sort of a thrill seeker, I suppose. But because those experiences, those things that you end up being like, oh, I'd never do that. That's, beyond, my capabilities, or that's, I'm too afraid. Those are the things that you should be doing. Those are the things that are going to make your life better, going to fulfill you. I was reading a blog post the other day about skydiving, and how someone was like, I was really afraid and everything, But I found out like once you do it, once you jump off of that plane, like the first 5 seconds, you're terrified. You're like, I'm gonna die. This is it. It's terrible. And then after those 5 seconds are over, you experience pure bliss, and you're like, this is amazing. This was worth every penny, worth everything, all of it. And like I said, those are the things that end up being the most enriching in your life, or at least one of the most enriching. Because, you know, those are the experiences that are really going to challenge you as a human, and challenge your perspective of things. Like, you know, you thought you couldn't do this, but now you can. So what other things can you do that you didn't think you were capable of before? So that's one of the things that that whole idiom, like I said, is one of the things that I've used in essays and things, and I've used it as kind of a guideline for my life. Is that you know, one of the things that we fear tend to be the things that are the most worthwhile. Even with this scholarship that I have, when I was first applying for it, I was like, I'm not about to get this. They about to chuck this off to the next person over there. Like, but you know what? I'm just gonna try. I'm gonna shoot for the stars and see what happens. Like, I'm really afraid that I'm gonna fail. And you know, I just went for it all the way, and here I am. You know, so kind of also in the same sense of what Andrea said, just do it. Just just do it. Just go for it.
I didn't have any fears about diving per se, but once I was diving, one of my concerns when I was still learning was damaging the environment that I was diving over. And so I think that I remember at a time, like really kind of racking my brain. I was terrible at buoyancy control, right? So, you know, I go plummeting down and flying back up, and I was just all over the place. And I remember I used to burn through so much oxygen just because I was so obsessive about not landing on the bottom, which I still do. And so I think, you know, everyone's touching on the same topic, which is that at times it does require you to just, you know, to just do it, just, you know, step over and take the chance, take the risk, whatever that may be in your life. But certainly if you're going to do diving, you know, just dive right in, pun intended. But, you know, do really try to enjoy the experience, even with like the concerns that are around you. So I do think that my obsession with like avoiding the bottom and being so delicate and not, you know, crashing into the bottom, and then observing people who are just like standing on it with their fins and like knocking things over, did detract from my experience earlier on. And as I learned to kind of like let go of that kind of obsessive nature of not touching things, still respecting the environment that I was in, but really starting to lean more into like the enjoyment aspect of it, my overall experience really kind of was enhanced.
One of the two things that definitely gave me anxiety when I first started diving was just the idea of like breathing underwater. I feel like I've gone, you know, my whole life not breathing underwater. And I first put the regulator in my mouth and like started going down. That always freaked me out when I was first going through the training. And then to something like what Jamel was saying, when you're down and just like really see how deep like where you are is, that also kind of freaked me out early on. It still does a little bit now, especially if I'm looking down and just see nothing. It's like, wow, I'm already 100 feet down. And I'm still like way more to go down there. That always definitely made me a little nervous.
Yeah, I just did a free diving course not too long ago, which is, for those of you that don't know, you don't have an oxygen tank. Like, you're not breathing, you're just holding your breath and swimming down. And there's a lot of people that do it now, and they kind of commercialize it. And so you can see on Instagram all these people free diving and doing cool stuff, and it looks great and it's awesome. But man, getting the training, I was like, woo, can I do this? Because they take a little plate and, you know, they take it down to 60 feet and then take it down to like 80 feet and then they take it down to 100 feet. And you're supposed to swim down there and then come back up with no air, just holding your breath. And I was like, y'all sure? Am I gonna make it? I remember swimming on the way back up, like kind of like Sidney was saying, like there's air, I'm gonna reach air, it's gonna be But once again, it's a challenge. But a challenge in a healthy way, a good challenge. So definitely something to consider doing, even if recreationally, if it's not for a whole career, like most of us are probably in here for. But yeah.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I had people all throughout last week and while I was getting certified message me like, oh my gosh, this looks so cool. Are you having so much fun? And mind you, they're asking me this on our Saturday, which we spent 6 hours doing skills in the pool, then did open water dives 1 and 2 right after. And I'm just like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But I mean, yeah, I guess it's pretty fun. But like the next day, like once you get through all this stuff, it's such a good time.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add to all what everyone's saying right now is that you all came back alive. That's number one. And your training prepared you to do that. Right. So you've been well prepared and well trained. And you're here to share your story. So the fear is conquerable. And some of us still are working on some things. I remember when I first started diving, I did have trouble with my ears as well, but I've learned lots of tricks by diving with lots of other divers and getting tips from them. So just keep doing it and diving. Yeah. And we dive on air. Yeah.
So we got some more questions here come from the chat. This is one's for you, Andrea. It's you've been diving since 1991. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the diving community?
Wow. The first thing that I've seen changing within the diving world first is that there are more Black and brown faces diving, and they're being recognized slowly but surely. That's happening. The other change I've noticed is the change of our diving environment, and that's due to the climate change. Our oceans are not the same. I'm diving off the Florida coast for years, and I see the difference in what it looks like. So doing coral restoration and doing all these studies, and working on these volunteer projects to help restore our oceans is very important. And the other thing I said is that there's a little bit more opportunity now for Black and brown faces in these spaces. So that's been good, but it's been slow coming, and it can speed up once we encourage others to participate and join us in this great field, in this great world of diving, I should say.
And kind of to go a little bit more over that, what Andrew just gave, and this is open to everyone to answer. What barriers other than cost also need to be broken to make scuba diving more welcoming for Black and brown people?
I would say kind of like the biggest thing is kind of what we touched on before with the inclusivity. Obviously, for brown and Black people, that's going to be a challenge. Even during this scholarship, there's all sorts of things that I have to navigate that other scholars might not have had to. And so that's once again probably going to be one of the biggest things to try to I guess get the world used to, because we're here, we're here to stay. We exist and we're just as valid as anybody else. And sometimes that's hard for other people that don't have to kind of deal with that on a daily basis. It's kind of hard for them to figure that out, hard for them to wrap their head around. And so by leading by example, by standing up for yourself and saying like, hey, I'm here, and no, you're not gonna treat me like this. I'm a human being, just like you. I'm just as capable. That's one of the things that we are essentially going to have to do, and that's across almost every field that you go into. Unfortunately, of course, diving notwithstanding, there's all sorts of fields where you're going to be surrounded by people that do not look like you, don't understand what you're going through, don't want to understand what you're going through. aren't interested in trying to help out. They just, I mean, I've had a situation where a scuba entity inappropriately approached me about becoming kind of the token mouthpiece in an agenda to maintain plausible deniability when they were faced with a racial issue. And I had to be like, you know, instead of trying to use me for your own goals to, you know, make yourself look objective, you know, perhaps it's better that you instead take action and do something that's more productive in terms of, you know, instead of looking like, oh yeah, well, we support Black people, doing something that actually supports Black people or brown people, you know, donating to a certain cause or giving out a scholarship to people that look like me, you know. So yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest things that Black and brown people will have to face.
Just to also answer that question, oh, sorry. I've been sitting here thinking like education is a really big part of it, because everyone else in my family think I'm crazy for wanting to be underwater like that, because it was never like brought to them like, oh, you know, like the ocean isn't scary, or like swimming at depth isn't like a horrifying thing. So like the thoughts were never like introduced at a younger age or an impressionable age. So I feel like introducing diving and stuff like that at more impressionable ages, like middle school, elementary schools, even high schoolers, would kind of start more interest. So I feel like education is one of the barriers also in the scuba world.
Yeah, Sydney's kind of alluding to what I was going to say, which is perception. I think a lot of what might be beneficial on both ends, both for those people of color who are coming into the experience, but also those who have traditionally dominated the experience, is the perception that diving isn't just a thing that white people do. I can't tell you the number of times where I do a thing that's not traditionally practiced or done by people of color, and you get that, wasn't that, wait, Black people do this? Black people scuba dive? And I think like the idea of more, not just more Black people or people of color scuba diving, but even the way that it's marketed, and whether it be the organizations that are providing the certifications, even just something like a Lego diving scuba kit, where you have people who aren't just white who are represented in these materials, changes the perception, the narrative, such that you're not on a boat, and not just people of color who haven't seen people of color scuba diving. It'd be the same people who make reckless comments about like, well, you know, oh, you're not just here to help carry my tanks, you know, like stupid stuff like that. So I do think perception is probably the one of the bigger barriers that would both ensure that people like Sidney's talking about that are younger can see themselves doing a thing, because all around them they see that experience being represented, and that would further encourage, I think, people to reach out and take the chance in doing something like scuba diving.
Yeah, that's great. And Sidney, we have a question more towards you from Addie White. It says, what was the hardest thing you did in your course, your diving course?
Honestly, the hardest part was probably maintaining my breathing whenever we would get to depth. So whenever we would be at the bottom of the 12-foot pool, like I kind of spoke on, just the anxiety and like the nervousness and being asked to complete skills while I'm already trying to like remain like calm, like, can I focus on my skill to breathe right now? That's the skill I'd like to do. Thank you. But they're asking us to do all these other skills that are like life or death that, you know, hopefully will never have to happen, but they do. So really it was just trying to like maintain, I guess, my personal anxiety while completing this skills. Most specifically, I'd say the hardest skill we did, I'd probably say was probably during the open water dive. It was either one or two when we did like the mass flood, and we had a long day, so it was getting pretty dark. And so not only was, fortunately, you know, the tide was a little low, so it wasn't too deep, but just kind of balancing the skills with like the nervousness or the anxiety just from being unfamiliar in the environment. That was probably the hardest part for sure. So just kind of helping myself remain calm to overcome those moments of anxiety.
Nice. Well, I know you had a fantastic instructor there with you, so yeah.
Oh no, the best, top tier, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Shout out Andrea, shout out to Nesty Vega, the best instructors in the
two great
business.
instructors. There were two of us. Nesty Vega was there too. He was a rock star instructor as well from Diversity and Aquatics. So yeah, we had a good time. It was fun. Looking forward to doing it again.
Definitely.
And Jamel, this one seems like it's for you. It's they're interested to hear about more about the Rolex scholarship. When does it start, and where will you be traveling or studying?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
They want to know more about the Rolex scholarship. When does it start, and where will you be traveling to or studying?
So the scholarship starts every year in June. But you need to start applying for it, obviously, in around like October, December, and then you turn your application in, I think, in January, and then they, tell you yay or nay. But it is an international scholarship, which is really cool. Unfortunately for me, that was during the pandemic. But you get to go around to different places in the world based on your interests and based on your goals, and potentially do follow those interests in those really awesome places. So far, a lot of my travels have been a lot in the U.S. Once again, COVID. But I've managed to get out internationally a little bit. I think first I went to like Rhode Island, Mexico, California, then I went out to Catalina Island, which is still California, and then further out all the way to the French Polynesian island, Marais, which is just south of Tahiti, super beautiful. And then went up to Michigan to do the Tuskegee Airmen excavation which I was with Andrea on, which was super fun. Also, I need to do my navigation stuff. But anyway, then went down to North Carolina, did some training with Dan, then down to Florida where I had that free diving experience that I talked about and some underwater photography stuff. Then went to DEMA, then back to California, and now I'm back in Florida. So just like a ping pong ball. But it's all in the pursuit of your goals. So basically, my goals for the scholarship are basically to diversify diving, diversify, the industry, because there are not a lot of folks that look like us. And then also to do more scientific stuff, and specifically marine science, because I'm from Ohio, once again, no salt water. So I want to get more into saltwater stuff. And then just improving my dive skills so that I can, help teach future generations and whatnot, and be solid in, in my skills. So those are kind of like the main ones. There's some side ones like photography and archaeology, but those are kind of like my main ones. So yeah, that's kind of what the scholarship is about in a nutshell.
Sweet. And I got certified in Ohio too, by the way.
Oh, hey. White Star or Gilboa?
Gilboa.
Okay. Yep. With all the giant planes and stuff. Although I'm kind of sorry. I'm sorry you didn't get certified in a place.
It was definitely not fun. It was very cold.
Yeah. So I'm like, I gotta get out of here. No, Ohio's okay. Ohio's just okay. Only okay, not like spectacular, just okay.
But so everyone's kind of talked about a little bit about just how great diving is, and even though there are these negatives, that is still such an exciting experience. What would you say some of your best experiences are diving? Either just like the dive community or things you saw underwater. What do you say the best experience it's been?
From a nature perspective, in one of my early dives off of Hawaii, I had 2 humpback whales swim like 2 meters by me, which was just
like all of our mouths open.
I'm
and I got it on video. That's the best part. And from a human perspective, it would be, honestly, like experiences like this, the people you meet, hearing other people's dive stories, hearing their experiences. It opens you up to a broader social community. And I found that really enjoyable.
My greatest experience to date, well, there are two. First one is just watching the light come on. I teach students to scuba dive, and seeing that light come on underwater is priceless. When they get that neutral buoyancy and they're just hanging in the water, like, yeah, that's it. The other thing that's top for me, I was diving in Maldives, and a manta came literally up to me, unfurled his little, I forget what it's called on for now. I always forget this. And it came over and touched my face. I'm like, what?
With the wings?
Or video, and I have memory in my heart, in my mind. That was awesome. So mantas are my friend. I was being called the manta whisperer on that trip because mantas always came over to me when I was diving. So I was like, yeah. Manta rays, I love them. And seahorses. And the people.
I would say the best experience that I had was my first night dive. Once again, I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, just a little bit. But I think I went out to the Blue Hole somewhere out in the Gulf of Mexico. And it was just phenomenal. That was really when it like clicked, like, oh yeah, we got to do this. Like, this is awesome. But we were on top of like a sunken airplane, and I was a little nervous because it's dark, it's night, got the flashlight, and just like, but there were a whole bunch of people around me. So, I felt like comfortable. And there was a whole bunch of bioluminescence. There were all these really cool organisms that were like trying to hide from our lights and swim around and like hanging out on this wreck. It was just like, it was magic, honestly. And so, yeah, that was one of the best dive experiences that I've had. It's always like stuck with me. It's kind of my first like click moment. So, yeah.
I've got more. I'm just kidding. Sleeping in Buzz Aldrin's bed. I don't know. I got to spend the night in the Aquarius Reef Base. Spent the night there. Didn't really sleep because I spent all night looking out of the portal watching the fish outside my window. I did actually go to sleep and did wake up, and there were fish again outside my window. So that was pretty awesome. It's a great experience.
Cindy, I know you're still pretty new to it, but you have anything?
I mean, my first, open water dive 4, I guess, would be my true first diving experience, because the only skill was not to die. Check. And honestly, I feel like my story is kind of lame, but we were just down there. And so for open water dive 3, I actually didn't have any defog. So I didn't even know what it was really like down there. My mouth was fogged, but I thought it was just blurry. So open water dive 4, I actually got to like see the colors and like the detail and all the coral, all the different environments down there that they had. And it was insane. The pufferfish we saw a pufferfish and a baby nurse shark. So those are probably the highlights of that dive. But just like knowing that like this is just the beginning of like such an amazing lifetime experience that I'm gonna get into was just breathtaking. The whole experience was awesome. When we got out of that water on the last open water dive, man, like we just got on the boat smiling, cheesing super hard. I'm sure you'll see it in the video because Rose caught some great footage. But we was all just like, wow, like what a time to be alive, bro.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Thank y'all so much. I need to jump on. This has been such an excellent panel, but we have our keynote coming up right after this. And I do want to actually do the giveaway, Chris. So I know I'm just jumping in. But we have a lot of divers and we've been talking about diving. So the question for our trivia, for our giveaway, we have our All We Can Save book autographed by Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. How long do you have to wait to fly after a dive? So if you've been diving and you need to get flued out, how long do you have to wait before you safely dive. So if you are in the audience right now on the YouTube, go ahead and put that in the chat. And the first person that does, BIMS will mail you this signed copy of All We Can Save. So please do that now. I'll give you 1 minute. While you're putting your answers in the chat, Q, please be monitoring the chat. Up next, we have our last keynote of BIMS week. It's kind of sad, but it's also awesome because this is a dynamic powerhouse keynote. And it's just, honestly, just go run to the bathroom real quick and then come right back. We're going to be live. Okay. We have 19 hours. Is that right, panel?
Nope.
Hey, oh no.
Someone has an answer.
Okay, I see 18
somebody.
hours. Is 18 hours right? All right, Max Bracy, 18 hours. Please send an email to info@bims.org with saying that you won this in the subject because we've been doing a lot, and we will get you your book. All righty, y'all. Go to the bathroom, come back.